Hi and welcome back to my channel. In this video I thought I'd speak a little bit about rereading books. This is something that I basically don't do. I've ever only read one book several times, and that is this one. It's Beatles by Lars Saabye Christensen. This is a book recommendation. It's about four boys growing up in Oslo in the 60s, and they relate to the different Beatles characters. But this is one of two books that I've reread my whole life. It's this and also a biography about Beatles, so there is a pattern. But lately I've been reading a lot from this guy, Haruki Murakami, and I read 1Q84, and that made me realize that this is the first book I think I've ever read in my adult life, thinking I could reread this again. So by having this realization, I thought I'd make this video to talk about some books that I would recommend, and also books that maybe I'll reread someday. And maybe 2024 will be the year where I actually reread a book. So let's get to it. Before I read 1Q84, I struggled to understand why people wanted to reread books at all, because to me it was like, I've read the story, I know what's going to happen, and that sort of spoils it for me. But after I read that one, I sort of understood how fun it is actually just escaping through a book, just leaving the world behind and going into it. And that's also something that happened when I read the Beatles books. But there is something to be said about a young age and your ability to just, something about just not having responsibilities and spending your time with what you feel like in the moment. I feel like many lose that ability when they grow older, and I'm no exception. But I do want to find that space where I just think about myself. I really feel like world escaping is one of those terms that could be used for reasons to reread, and in that sense I have one series that I've started and sort of is my go-to if I just want easy entertainment and escapism, and that is The Rivers of London by Ben Arnovich. This is a series I have not completed, but I do feel like this is something that I could revisit later and just it doesn't matter that I've read them from before. They're funny and they're entertaining, and it's that entertaining aspect, and also they're easily read, so it's no trouble just going for them. I know what to expect. I've read them before. It's just a funny universe, so it's a bit of escapism. It's funny, it's easily read, and it's a bit absurd as well. So it's really like escaping from the normal, terrible world we live in sometimes. Which leads me over to my first ever thought about rereading, because rereading isn't something you talk about in the normal world. You might bump into a person that says, well, this book I've read several times, but you won't actually go up and ask people about rereads. Or at least that's my experience. But anyway, when I started YouTube, this was one of the first books I read. It's Anansi Boys by Neil Gaiman. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and it was one of my first loves when it comes to books. And just the opening scene where an older man stands in a karaoke bar drunk and doing things to women he shouldn't, and then dies, it's just immensely fun. And when I think about this book, I think about laughing. So in the future, if I'm going to reread a book for the fun of it, I think this will be the first one to go. I read a lot of Neil Gaiman the first year I did this channel, and not all books I found to be great, but this is probably my favorite. Also, this is a parallel universe-esque thing, so that's also a part of the escapism, I guess. If you have a strategy for rereading, please comment below, because I'm very interested to hear what you think about it. I'm guessing that people just reread the books they want to and feel like in the moment. It's not like me, where I just think about rereading a lot and never do it, so please share your thoughts. Let's move this along, and the next one is The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas. This is one of my favorite books. This is an abridged version, so I guess the normal one is twice the size, but that isn't really translated to Norwegian. But the thing is that I feel like a lot of people reread books for getting all the details, finding out what the author has put as what is it called? It's not a Kinder surprise. Easter egg, I guess. So it's like if you read it one time and you feel like there's so much in this that I'm missing out on, you might want to revisit. One thing is that it's abridged, so I feel like I've been missing out. I loved it, so if it's twice the size, maybe I'll love it even more, or maybe I won't. That's the scary part. But also, it can be a bit complicated. People are dressing up as others, acting like someone they're not, and there are a lot of names, and things are happening all over the place, so that's also a thing. But this is surely a book recommendation, and I do want to take a look at it at some point. The next one is Haldor Laxness and Independent People. I felt like this was one of those books where you read it and you still feel that something's missing. He has won the Nobel Prize for Literature, and I feel like this is sort of thing that is with a lot of these books, that there's so much put into them. You feel like you're not extracting it all when you read it the first time. Maybe it's just me thinking that it's more snobbish than it actually is, but that was my feeling. I enjoyed the language, I really enjoyed the atmosphere, but when I finished it, I felt like, is there more to it? So some books I have this feeling where it's a bit of curiosity to whether it contains more than I got the first time, I guess. I don't know what to call this segment. It's the segment of books where I feel like there's more to them than I noticed the first time around, I guess. Also, this is probably the segment of books where it's the highest probability of getting disappointed, since I didn't love them the first time around. But the next section, I'm pretty sure what I'm going to call, and that is the dementia section. And we start off with Per Pettersson and Outstealing Horses. This came out in 2006. It was a huge success in this country, but all that's left with me now, I read it the same year, so it's a long time since I read it, and now I'm just left with a feeling the book gave me. And the feeling I would describe vaguely as wonder. I'm now wondering what has happened to myself, and have I matured since I was 17? I really don't know, but reading books might be an effective way of discovering what you've experienced since you read it the first time. Now, since I read a whole lot of books the last 3 years, I feel I'm sort of looking forward to, in 20 years, revisiting some of these books and see if my feelings are the same. My advantage now is, of course, that I can go and rewatch my videos and see how I felt about these books a long time afterwards. But we'll see if I do that. Actually, right after I finished talking about Outstealing Horses, I realized something, and that is that I actually have one more reread that I have done, which I didn't think of, and that is The Birds by Tarja Vesaas. And this was not a book that I enjoyed the first time around, but it's now one of my favorites. So I think about 20 years has passed in between, and so from 17 to now, don't know, but from 13, I guess, and till now, something has changed, luckily. And this is one of my biggest book recommendations for if you want to read a Norwegian book. It's about a different person trying to be like everyone else and slowly discovering that he's not like everyone else. And it's saddening and beautiful. So I just wanted to mention this when I realized that I actually have reread 3 books, not only Beatles books. Now let's get over to my feelings. I thought I'd just mention these ones. Sally Rooney with Normal People is one of those first books I read where I actually just enjoyed being in the book as well. It's about a relationship that's very normal. I guess the things that you hear about Sally Rooney are true. She's very relatable, and when you read her books, it's like something that I've never really read before, because the emotions are just very, very much to the point. It's a shorter book, and it's just really nice to dive into. And this is Fredrik Backman and Things My Son Needs to Know About the World. It's my first Backman book, and not my last. I've read quite a few of his now, but this made me cry on the subway. And there's something to be said about books that just tear your emotions apart. This is a non-fiction about himself and him discovering how it is to be a father and the surprises that it brings. I now have 2 small children, so I guess that later in life I would like to revisit this just to cry a bit over the missing my children. I guess that's going to be a thing in a while, so I'm just preparing for that to happen at some point. It's not difficult to read, it's just happy and tearful, in my opinion. So, yeah, a recommendation there as well. Now you know my inner thoughts when it comes to rereading. I'm very curious to see what books I'm actually going to reread at some point, and I hope you'll tag along for the journey. So, thank you for watching this video, leave your best reread down below, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!